Gog and Magog, the mysterious and fearsome figures found in biblical prophecy and historical legend, have captivated the imagination of scholars, theologians, and storytellers for centuries. Their enigmatic presence in the scriptures has sparked countless debates regarding their identity, origin, and the role they play in the grand narrative of human history and eschatology. Are they literal nations, symbolic representations of chaos, or supernatural entities set to bring about the final battle? The truth lies buried in ancient texts, religious traditions, and the echoes of history. The first mention of Gog and Magog appears in the Hebrew Bible within the book of Ezekiel. In Ezekiel 38-39, Gog is described as a powerful leader from the land of Magog, leading an alliance of nations against Israel in the latter days. This prophecy details an apocalyptic invasion where Gog and his vast army march against God's chosen people, only to be utterly defeated by divine intervention. The text describes their fate in vivid detail, a catastrophic battle where fire and brimstone rain down from the heavens, consuming the invading forces. Their bodies are left strewn across the battlefield, and their weapons become fuel for fire for 7 years, Ezekiel 39:9. The sheer devastation is so great that it takes 7 months to bury the dead, and a special group is assigned to cleanse the land of their remains. But who is Gog, and where is Magog? Ezekiel presents Gog as the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, lands that many historians and biblical scholars associate with regions in modern-day Turkey or Central Asia. The name Magog itself is shrouded in mystery, often linked to nomadic tribes of the ancient world, such as the Scythians or the Cimmerians, who were known for their fierce war tactics and their clashes with early civilizations. These people, living on the fringes of the known world, were often depicted as uncivilized and warlike, making them fitting candidates for the biblical imagery of an unstoppable horde descending upon the people of God. Gog and Magog resurface once again in the Christian New Testament, specifically in the book of Revelation. Revelation 20:7-10 speaks of a time after the 1,000-year reign of Christ, when Satan is released from his prison and gathers the nations, symbolized as Gog and Magog, to wage war against the holy city. This time, however, the battle is brief. Fire descends from heaven, consuming the forces of evil, and Satan is cast into the lake of fire for eternity. Here, Gog and Magog are no longer mere nations, but rather symbolic of the final rebellion against God before the ultimate judgment. Beyond the Bible, Gog and Magog appear in various Jewish traditions and extra-biblical texts. The ancient Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, writing in the 1st century AD, identifies Magog with the Scythians, a warlike nomadic people from the steppes of Eurasia. The Talmud, a central text of Rabbinic Judaism, also references Gog and Magog, linking them to the apocalyptic wars preceding the Messianic age. In some Jewish traditions, the legend of Gog and Magog intertwines with the idea of a future war that will test the faith of Israel before the coming of the Messiah. The figures of Gog and Magog also make their way into Islamic eschatology, appearing in the Quran as Yajuj and Majuj. In Surah Al-Kahf 18:83-98 and Surah Al-Anbiya 21:96, they are depicted as chaotic, destructive forces imprisoned behind a massive barrier built by Dhul Qarnayn, a mysterious ruler often identified with Alexander the Great. According to Islamic tradition, in the last days, this barrier will be breached, unleashing Yajuj and Majuj upon the world, causing widespread devastation before divine intervention restores order. The legend of Gog and Magog did not remain confined to religious texts. During the medieval period, European and Islamic scholars linked them to real-world threats. Some Christian chroniclers saw them as the Mongol hordes led by Genghis Khan, whose brutal conquests seemed to match the biblical descriptions of an unstoppable force from the east. Others identified them with the Vikings, whose sudden and devastating raids on European settlements led to fears of an apocalyptic invasion. Even as late as the 19th and 20th centuries, Gog and Magog were sometimes interpreted through the lens of geopolitical conflicts, with various nations speculating that their adversaries were the prophesied forces of destruction. Despite their ominous reputation, the imagery of Gog and Magog also found a place in folklore and cultural traditions. In medieval England, statues of Gog and Magog were incorporated into the Lord Mayor's Show in London, where they were depicted as giants symbolizing ancient British history. This curious transformation from biblical adversaries to folk heroes highlights the fluidity of myth and the way stories evolve across different cultures and eras. The mystery of Gog and Magog continues to intrigue scholars, theologians, and history enthusiasts alike. Are they simply ancient nations long forgotten by time? Do they represent an eternal struggle between good and evil? Or are they a foreshadowing of future conflicts yet to come? While their true identity remains elusive, their role in prophecy serves as a powerful reminder of the recurring cycles of history, of great empires rising and falling, of wars that reshape civilizations, and of the ultimate triumph of divine justice. Regardless of interpretation, one thing remains clear: Gog and Magog are more than just names in a book. They are symbols of a cosmic battle, timeless figures woven into the fabric of history, faith, and human imagination. Whether viewed as historical figures, mythological archetypes, or prophetic warnings, their legacy endures, whispering through the ages of a final reckoning yet to unfold. Gog and Magog have long stood as enigmatic figures in history, mythology, and religious texts, sparking intrigue and debate across civilizations. Their names echo through biblical prophecies, ancient folklore, and modern pop culture, weaving a tapestry of mystery that has fascinated scholars, theologians, and storytellers for centuries. From their ominous presence in the Bible to their legendary association with medieval Europe and their reinterpretation in contemporary narratives, Gog and Magog embody the ever-shifting relationship between myth and history. The origins of Gog and Magog can be traced to the Old Testament, where they first appear in the book of Ezekiel 38 to 39. Here, they are described as apocalyptic figures. Gog, a warlike leader from the land of Magog, who, along with his vast army, is prophesied to invade Israel in a climactic battle ordained by God. The prophecy speaks of a coalition of nations led by Gog, poised to wage war against God's chosen people, only to be utterly defeated through divine intervention. The imagery is stark: fire, brimstone, and an earth-shaking catastrophe that leaves the bodies of Gog's army strewn across the land. Ezekiel's prophecy, vivid and unsettling, has been interpreted as a symbolic warning of a future battle between good and evil, a theme that resonates across religious traditions. The motif of Gog and Magog re-emerges in the New Testament, in the book of Revelation 27 to 10, where they take on a broader, more cosmic significance. In this apocalyptic vision, after 1,000 years of peace, Satan is unleashed upon the world once more, gathering the nations, symbolized by Gog and Magog, for a final rebellion against God. This climactic confrontation ends in their complete annihilation as divine fire descends upon them, reaffirming God's ultimate sovereignty over creation. This depiction transforms Gog and Magog into archetypal forces of chaos and rebellion, eternally recurring symbols of mankind's struggle against divine authority. Beyond the Bible, the legends of Gog and Magog traveled across cultures and epochs, finding a particularly vivid home in medieval European folklore. During the Middle Ages, their story evolved into a mythic account tied to Alexander the Great. According to various medieval sources, including the Alexander Romance and later Islamic traditions, Alexander encountered the savage tribes of Gog and Magog while campaigning in the east. To protect the civilized world from their monstrous invasion, he constructed an immense iron gate between two mountains, sealing them away until the end of time. This tale, blending biblical prophecy with historical legend, inspired a widespread belief that a hidden, menacing force lay waiting beyond the known world, ready to break free when the time of judgment arrived. In England, Gog and Magog took on an entirely different role. They became the guardian giants of London, an odd but fascinating transformation from biblical harbingers of doom to symbolic protectors of the city. The story, rooted in Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century Historia Regum Britannia, suggests that Gog and Magog were once defeated by the legendary Trojan founder of Britain, Brutus, who then chained them to the gates of his city. Over time, their figures were incorporated into civic processions and pageantry, most notably appearing as grand wooden statues in London's Guildhall, a tradition that persists to this day in the annual Lord Mayor's Show. This reinvention highlights how myths evolve, adapting to the needs and cultural identity of different societies. In the modern era, Gog and Magog have transcended religious and historical narratives to permeate literature, movies, and video games, often serving as metaphors for apocalyptic threats or embodiments of primeval chaos. They appear in fantasy novels, comic books, and even political discourse, often invoked as a warning of impending doom or a force that must be contained. In J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, echoes of their legend can be seen in the dark forces that lie beyond the known world, threatening to return. Similarly, in dystopian fiction, the imagery of a catastrophic invasion by an overwhelming enemy carries shades of the biblical prophecy. Even video games have adopted their names, portraying Gog and Magog as monstrous entities or endgame bosses symbolizing ultimate destruction. Throughout history, Gog and Magog have evolved, transforming from biblical antagonists into symbols of cultural and mythological significance across civilizations. Their presence in Scripture casts them as agents of divine reckoning, while medieval and modern reinterpretations have recast them as everything from monstrous invaders to protective giants and enduring allegories for humanity's darkest fears. Whether seen as destroyers, guardians, or metaphysical symbols, their legacy remains an enduring and intriguing puzzle, woven into the fabric of history, religion, and storytelling. Ultimately, the legend of Gog and Magog serves as a powerful reminder of how myth and history intertwine. Their story, passed down through generations, continues to be reshaped by each culture that encounters it, proving that some legends never truly fade. Whether awaiting their prophesied return or standing sentinel over a great city, Gog and Magog remain figures of wonder, dread, and fascination, forever etched into the collective imagination of humankind. From the depths of ancient prophecy to the echoes of modern speculation, the names Gog and Magog have carried a haunting resonance throughout history. Mentioned in sacred texts, mythological lore, and geopolitical theories, these enigmatic figures, or nations, stand as harbingers of chaos and destruction, often linked to the ultimate battle at the end of time. But who, or what, are Gog and Magog? Are they literal entities destined to bring forth apocalyptic doom, or do they symbolize something far greater, embedded in the grand narrative of humanity's struggle between good and evil? The origins of Gog and Magog can be traced back to the Old Testament, where they first appear in the book of Ezekiel. In Ezekiel 38-39, Gog is described as a prince from the land of Magog, leading a great army against Israel in the latter days. The passage paints a vivid picture of an overwhelming force descending upon the Holy Land, only to be utterly defeated by divine intervention. The battle is not merely a military conflict, but a cosmic confrontation between the forces of destruction and the will of God. The prophecy declares that fire, earthquakes, and divine wrath will consume the invaders, leaving their corpses as a gruesome testament to the power of the Almighty. This apocalyptic imagery has led theologians and scholars to ponder: is Gog a literal ruler? Is Magog a specific nation? Or are they allegorical representations of those who rise against divine order? The legend of Gog and Magog does not end with Ezekiel. The book of Revelation revisits their ominous presence, reinterpreting them in a vastly different context. In Revelation 20:7-10, Gog and Magog re-emerge after the millennial reign of Christ, gathered by Satan for one final attempt to overthrow God's kingdom. Unlike Ezekiel's prophecy, which seems grounded in a historical or near-future conflict, Revelation situates them at the very end of history, reinforcing their role as instruments of ultimate rebellion against divine authority. In this passage, their fate is once again sealed by divine fire, consuming them before they can lay waste to the holy city. This dual depiction, first as an invading force in Ezekiel and later as eschatological agents in Revelation, has fueled centuries of debate over their true identity. Outside of the Bible, references to Gog and Magog have taken on an almost mythical quality, with interpretations stretching across religious, cultural, and even political spheres. In Jewish tradition, they are often linked to distant barbaric nations that threaten the civilized world. Some ancient rabbis identified them with the Scythians, a nomadic warrior people of Eurasia, whose reputation for brutality and conquest seemed to fit Ezekiel's description. In Christian eschatology, they became an enduring symbol of the ultimate enemies of God, often tied to geopolitical adversaries of different eras. During the medieval period, European maps frequently depicted Gog and Magog as real lands beyond the known world, sometimes associated with Mongol hordes that threatened Christendom. Islamic tradition also embraces the narrative of Gog and Magog, known as Ya'juj and Ma'juj, placing them in the context of end times prophecy. The Quran describes them as a corrupt, destructive people imprisoned behind a mighty barrier built by the righteous ruler Dhul Qarnayn. According to Islamic eschatology, they will one day break free and wreak havoc upon the earth before being divinely annihilated. This portrayal aligns with the biblical concept of Gog and Magog as agents of chaos unleashed in the final days, reinforcing their status as universal figures of apocalyptic dread. Beyond religious texts, the legend of Gog and Magog has seeped into folklore and historical narratives. The British Isles, for example, have their own peculiar take on these figures. Medieval legends claimed that Gog and Magog were giants who once roamed Britain, later captured and enslaved by the Trojan founder of London, Brutus. Their names became associated with the city's mythological origins, and even today, their statues stand as ceremonial guardians of London, carried in processions during the Lord Mayor's show. Though vastly different from their biblical counterparts, these folkloric interpretations highlight the adaptability of their mythos across cultures and epochs. In modern times, the spectre of Gog and Magog continues to loom over political and religious discourse. Throughout history, various world powers have been labeled as potential manifestations of Gog and Magog. In Cold War rhetoric, some saw the Soviet Union as a modern Magog, poised to fulfill Ezekiel's prophecy. Others have linked the concept to contemporary global conflicts, speculating on whether a future geopolitical clash could mirror the biblical end-times battle. While some view these interpretations as mere conspiracy theories, the persistence of Gog and Magog in discussions of war and destiny reveals their enduring symbolic power. The real-world implications of Gog and Magog's legend are profound. They embody the eternal struggle between divine justice and earthly rebellion, between order and chaos, between civilization and barbarism. Whether taken literally or metaphorically, their story serves as a stark reminder of humanity's cyclical encounters with destruction and renewal. Do they represent actual nations or rulers? Are they metaphors for the ever-present threat of evil? Or do they symbolize the spiritual battles waged within every soul? As with all great mysteries, the legend of Gog and Magog remains an open question, inviting endless interpretation and reflection. Whether seen as supernatural agents of doom, mythological constructs, or prophetic warnings of conflicts yet to come, their place in history is undeniable. They remind us that the past, present, and future are woven together in an intricate web of faith, fear, and fascination, one that continues to captivate minds and shape narratives of the apocalypse to this very day. Throughout history, few names have stirred as much intrigue and speculation as Gog and Magog. These enigmatic figures have transcended their biblical origins to become symbols of geopolitical tensions, apocalyptic fears, and global anxieties. As the world grapples with uncertainty, conflicts, and shifting power dynamics, the rise of Gog and Magog in modern times has captured the imagination of many, fueling discussions about prophecy, history, and the fate of nations. The origins of Gog and Magog trace back to the Bible, appearing in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 to 39, and later in the book of Revelation, 27 to 10. In Ezekiel's prophecy, Gog is depicted as a powerful leader from the land of Magog, leading a vast coalition of nations against Israel in a climactic battle. God intervenes, unleashing divine wrath upon Gog and his forces, ensuring their utter defeat. This vision has long been associated with an eschatological confrontation between good and evil, a final reckoning before a new era of divine rule. The book of Revelation amplifies this theme, presenting Gog and Magog as forces of chaos that re-emerge at the end of the millennial reign of Christ. Satan, having been bound for 1,000 years, is released to deceive the nations, gathering them for one last assault against God's people. Fire from heaven consumes these rebellious forces, marking their ultimate destruction. This dramatic narrative has fueled centuries of speculation, with theologians, scholars, and world leaders interpreting Gog and Magog as allegories for real-world threats, past and present. Historically, the identity of Gog and Magog has been the subject of much debate. Ancient Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions have attempted to link them to various peoples and empires. Some early commentators associated them with the Scythians, a nomadic group known for their ferocity in battle. In the medieval era, European chroniclers identified Gog and Magog with Mongol hordes sweeping across Asia and Eastern Europe, led by Genghis Khan and his successors. During the Cold War, many Western theologians and political analysts pointed to the Soviet Union, drawing parallels between the atheistic superpower and the biblical forces of darkness. Even today, some view rising global powers, radical ideologies, and military alliances as potential manifestations of Gog and Magog. The resurgence of interest in Gog and Magog in modern times is deeply tied to contemporary geopolitical events. In an age of nuclear proliferation, cyber warfare, and international conflicts, fears of an apocalyptic showdown have not diminished. Many evangelical Christians and eschatologists scrutinize current affairs, searching for signs of Gog's emergence. Tensions in the Middle East, particularly involving Israel, Russia, Iran, and other regional powers, are often analyzed through the lens of Ezekiel's prophecy. The idea of a great northern power, interpreted by some as Russia, leading a confederation of nations against Israel, continues to gain traction, especially amid shifting alliances and military escalations. Furthermore, Gog and Magog have become potent metaphors in political discourse. Leaders and commentators invoke their names to describe adversarial nations, viewing global struggles as part of a larger, cosmic battle. The framing of ideological and military conflicts in apocalyptic terms has been a recurring theme in history, and today's political rhetoric is no exception. Whether it is discussions about superpower rivalries, radical movements, or global conspiracies, the specter of Gog and Magog looms large in the collective consciousness. Beyond political interpretations, the concept of Gog and Magog resonates deeply with audiences seeking explanations for global challenges. In a rapidly changing world marked by pandemics, economic instability, and social upheaval, apocalyptic narratives provide a sense of structure and meaning. The idea that history is moving toward a predetermined climax, where divine justice will ultimately prevail, offers solace to many. This enduring belief fuels fascination with biblical prophecy, reinforcing the notion that current events are not random, but part of a grand, unfolding plan. Yet, despite these interpretations, the true identity of Gog and Magog remains elusive. Are they literal nations, allegorical representations of evil, or both? The ambiguity surrounding them allows for endless reinterpretation, ensuring their relevance across different historical contexts. As new powers rise and old empires fall, the search for Gog and Magog continues, each generation finding fresh reasons to see their hand at work in world affairs. Ultimately, the rise of Gog and Magog in modern times is a testament to the enduring power of biblical prophecy and its ability to shape human perception of history and destiny. Whether viewed as ancient symbols of chaos or as tangible geopolitical threats, their presence in contemporary discourse underscores humanity's deep-seated fears and hopes. As the world moves forward, the question remains: are we witnessing the unfolding of an ancient prophecy, or are we merely projecting our anxieties onto the timeless symbols of Gog and Magog?